The wind swept across the ancient city of Constantinople, carrying the scent of salt and smoke. For more than 1,000 years, these walls had defied armies, storms, and time itself. But now, in the year 1453, they stood before their final test. Once, this city had been the shining heart of the Byzantine Empire, the heir to Rome, the crossroads of East and West. Its golden domes glittered beneath the sun, and its streets echoed with prayers in a dozen tongues. But the glory had faded. The empire had shrunk to a shadow, a handful of towns, a few fortresses, and this city, the last light of a dying world. At the gates of that light stood a young ruler, Sultan Mehmed II, just 21 years old, yet carrying the ambition of 1,000 warriors. To him, Constantinople was not just a city, it was destiny. His father had tried and failed to take it. Generations of sultans before him had fallen before its walls. Mehmed swore he would not. Across the narrow waters of the Bosporus, his army gathered like a sea of iron. 100,000 soldiers, thousands of horses, endless siege engines. And something the world had never seen before, the great cannons of Urban. Monstrous bronze weapons that could shatter stone like glass. Inside the city, the Emperor Constantine XI Paleologos stood at the walls, gazing out toward the rising dust. His army numbered barely 7,000 Greeks, Italians, mercenaries, monks, and farmers. Yet their courage burned brighter than any empire. The people whispered prayers in Hagia Sophia, their candles flickering against the mosaics of saints. They knew what was coming. They had seen the omens, comets in the sky, earthquakes shaking the sea walls, and now the drums of war growing louder with each dawn. Mehmed rode before his army and raised his sword to the heavens. "We will take the city of the Caesars," he declared, "and I will make it the jewel of Islam." His voice carried over the plains. The soldiers roared in reply, a sound that shook the ground. The first cannon thundered. The world trembled. A rain of stone and dust exploded from the Theodosian walls, those massive, triple-layered defenses that had stood for a millennium. Yet even as chunks of marble fell, the Byzantines rushed to rebuild. Night after night, the city glowed with firelight. Women and children carried stones, priests blessed the wounded, and soldiers patched holes with rubble and faith. The defenders fought not for glory, but for the soul of civilization itself. Outside the walls, Mehmed's camp stretched for miles, tents of red and black, banners fluttering under the crescent moon. The cannons fired day and night. The earth itself seemed to groan beneath their weight. From his tower, Constantine could see the enemy's fires endless, burning like stars upon the ground. He turned to his advisors and said quietly, "The world sleeps, but Constantinople will not." In the silence that followed, he looked toward Hagia Sophia. Its great dome shone faintly under moonlight, a ghost of ancient majesty. Perhaps he knew that within weeks, its bells would fall silent forever. The siege stretched into its second week. The city's food stores ran low. The sea lanes, once the city's lifeline, were choked by Ottoman galleys. The emperor prayed for aid from the west, but none came. The Pope sent words, not armies. Europe watched and waited. Mehmed ordered a bold move. He would attack from the sea, but the chain that guarded the Golden Horn, a massive iron barrier, kept his ships away. So the Sultan devised a plan no one believed possible. Under moonlight, his men laid wooden planks over the hills north of the city, greased them with animal fat, and dragged dozens of warships overland, rolling them on logs and ropes, until they slid down into the harbor behind the Byzantine fleet. When dawn broke, the defenders stared in disbelief. The sea behind them was now filled with Ottoman ships. The walls that had protected them from the water were now useless. Panic spread through the city. Constantine ordered his men to hold every gate, every tower, every breach. The sound of bells filled the air. Priests carried icons along the battlements. Children wept as soldiers kissed the ground. Before returning to the walls, the cannons roared again. Dust and fire filled the air. Stone crumbled. Arrows darkened the sky. From the highest towers, Byzantine archers fired until their arms bled. Below them, the Ottomans built wooden towers, siege ramps and tunnels. Days turned into nights of terror. The city shook with explosions. The dead were buried where they fell, Yet still the flag of the double-headed eagle flew above the walls. Even Mehmed began to wonder, how could this small band resist an empire's fury? But then, one morning, as the sun rose over the Golden Horn, he smiled. His scouts had found a weakness, a hidden gate, long forgotten, called the Kerkerporta, inside the city. Constantine met with his generals for what would be the final time. His voice was calm, his eyes unbroken. "The hour has come," he said. "We will not surrender. We will die as Romans." That night, the priests opened the doors of Hagia Sophia. The people gathered, nobles, beggars, soldiers, children. There was no division, no empire, no wealth, only faith, and the sound of whispered prayers echoing beneath the dome. Outside, the Ottoman army prepared for the final assault. Thousands lined up in formation, torches blazing in the darkness. The air was thick with smoke and tension. Mehmed rode before them one last time. "The city will fall tonight," he said, his eyes gleaming beneath his helmet, "and with it, a new world will begin." As midnight approached, the first horn sounded. Drums rolled like thunder. The cannons unleashed their fury. From every direction, the Ottoman army surged forward. The ground shook beneath their feet. The defenders fought with desperate strength. The wounded fought. The dying fought. Every street became a battlefield. Every stone a monument to courage. Constantine himself stood at the wall, sword in hand, armor shining with dust and blood. He shouted to his men, "Whoever wishes to live, follow me," and as the dawn of May 29th neared, the city of Constantinople prepared to face its fate. The walls cracked, the gates trembled, and history itself held its breath. The final dawn rose blood-red over the city of Constantinople. Smoke curled through the morning air as if the heavens themselves mourned what was about to unfold. The drums outside the walls thundered in rhythm, the heartbeat of an empire about to be reborn. Sultan Mehmed II stood on a hill overlooking the battlefield, his armor glimmering in the dim light. Before him stretched a sea of soldiers, janissaries, archers, cavalry, and cannons ready to strike their last blow. He whispered a prayer, raised his sword, and gave the signal. A roar erupted across the plains. The final assault had begun. Waves of Ottoman infantry charged. Forward, their banners whipping in the wind. The cannons screamed once more, pounding the ancient Theodosian walls until stone turned to dust. Arrows rained down like a storm of black fire. Inside the city, Emperor Constantine XI rushed to the front lines. His armor was dented, his cape torn, but his spirit burned like iron. He called out to his men, "Hold the walls, for God, for faith, for the empire." His voice rose above the chaos, defiant and proud. The first wave of attackers fell under arrows and boiling oil, but the next pressed harder. Ladders slammed against the walls, men climbed, fell, and climbed again. The defenders fought like lions. Greek fire poured from above, burning men alive in crimson flame. But for every soldier who fell, 10 more took his place. The Ottomans pushed forward relentlessly. Smoke blinded the sky, dust choked the air, and the earth trembled under the fury of battle. Then, a sound echoed that no one had heard in 1,000 years, the cracking of the outer wall. A section of stone crumbled, opening a wound in the city's armor. Mehmed's cannons had done their work. The defenders rushed to fill the gap, stacking rubble, wood, and even bodies to hold the breach. Constantine fought beside them, sword flashing, face streaked with blood and dust. "This is where we make our stand," he cried. The Ottomans surged again. Trumpets blared. The janissaries, the Sultan's elite soldiers, advanced with cold precision. Behind them, Mehmed watched, calm, certain, unstoppable. Suddenly, from the north, a cry tore through the air. The Kerkerporta gate had been left unbarred. A handful of Ottoman soldiers found it open, slipped inside, and raised their banner atop the inner wall. Panic swept through the defenders for a moment. Confusion reigned. Some thought the city had already fallen. The line wavered. The Sultan's army saw their chance. Thousands charged through the breach. The defenders were overwhelmed, streets filled with chaos, steel and screams. The air turned red with dust and blood. Constantine refused to flee, surrounded by his few remaining guards. He cast off his imperial cloak so no one would recognize the emperor. "The city is lost," he said, quietly, "but I will die with my people." He plunged into the melee, fighting hand to hand. Witnesses said he disappeared beneath a wave of enemies, his sword flashing until the very end. No one ever found his body. By sunrise, the city that had once defied the world lay broken. The great gates opened to the conquerors. Ottoman banners rose above the towers. The echo of cannon fire faded into silence. Mehmed rode through the shattered walls and entered Constantinople. The streets were filled with smoke and ash. He dismounted near the Hagia Sophia, the heart of the empire, and looked up at its vast dome. He stepped inside. The mosaics of Christ and the Virgin Mary glowed faintly in the dim light. Soldiers stood in awe. Mehmed whispered softly, "There is no God but God, and Muhammad is his messenger." The echo of his words filled the chamber. He ordered the building preserved, not destroyed, and converted into a mosque. The sound of prayer rose for the first time within its ancient walls. Outside, the city was silent. The centuries of Byzantine rule had ended. The Eastern Roman Empire, which had lasted for more than 1,000 years, was no more. Yet in that silence, a new world began. The fall of Constantinople sent shockwaves across Europe. Scholars fled west carrying ancient Greek texts, the seeds of the Renaissance. Trade routes shifted, forcing explorers to seek new paths, leading to the discovery of the Americas. The fall of one city changed the course of the entire world. Mehmed II would later be called the Conqueror, a title he carried with pride. Under his rule, Constantinople became Istanbul, the new capital of the Ottoman Empire, a bridge between two continents, two worlds, and two ages. The old world had died, but from its ashes rose a new one shaped by conquest, faith, and destiny. As the sun set over the Bosporus that evening, the waters glimmered red, reflecting both blood and glory. The empire of Rome was gone. The empire of Islam had risen. And so ended the last breath of Byzantium, the city that refused to die. Until it became immortal in history, its walls may have fallen, but its story would echo forever.